Hello and welcome to Sound Librarian. I'm Stefan Schutz. So, I don't play racing games. Like really, I don't play racing games. In my entire life, I've probably played maybe half a dozen, and that includes things like, giant Daytona coin-operated machines. It's not that I don't necessarily like the concept of racing car games, it's just that I tend to want to do more fantastical things when I play games. I want to do things that I can't do in real life. Now, admittedly, I can't drive a Formula One car in real life, but if it's a choice between that and flying a dragon, the dragon wins. However, I knew it was important to include some racing games in this series because the production values of producing good racing car games are very important, and there are a lot of people who enjoy playing racing car games. The choice for today, being Forza Horizon, is the perfect game for somebody who doesn't play racing games. And I was quite surprised. There is so much about this game that they've gotten right. It was so much fun to play. As somebody who doesn't play racing games, I am wanting to go back and play this game more just because it's so enjoyable. You get the feeling of speed, you can have fun, you can crash and it doesn't matter, you can collect all the cars. There are so many things that they've done really, really well. And there's some things they've done in the audio very well. There's one thing I'm going to point out that they could have done better, and we'll get to that. Let's have a look at Forza Horizon.
In 400 meters, keep right. Keep right.
So, from the audio point of view, obviously racing car games are all about the engines, and Forza is no exception. There's a lot that needs to be done right, though, for you to be able to enjoy the racing car engines. So it's not just as simple as, yes, we've got some really, really awesome engine sounds, there you go, audio finished.
You have arrived at your destination.
Obviously, for a lot of games, music is a big element, and Forza has lots of licensed music that you can listen to while you're racing. But generally for me, the first thing I do in most racing games is I shut the music off, and I've done that here. It's not because the music necessarily is bad. Whether I like the particular choice of music or not is not that relevant. It's more the case of, if I'm going to play a game like this, it's because I want to hear the engines. And I enjoy hearing the engines because the quality of the engines really, really enhances the sense of speed. The thing with Forza is that it has so many cars that you can collect and drive that there's just a massive undertaking of car engines in this thing. Before we get to the engines themselves, I want to talk about all the other aspects. Now, one of the things I really did like in Forza is a lot of the UI sounds. There's all these sounds of popping up score bonuses and little achievements that you make, even within a race, of overtaking somebody or taking a corner in a certain way or doing something that excites the crowd. And that's something about Forza that's very, very user-friendly, especially for people who don't play racing car games. I found at times I was getting bonuses for running into things and crashing because it was all adding to the overall dynamic feel of the event. The audience loved what was going on, and crashing into things seemed to be stuff that quite often was popular. And so you get all these little sounds, lots of these user interface sounds that were indicating what was going on. Scores, timing, bonuses, and things like that. And they all had a really, really good dynamic to them that just seemed to add to the overall energy of this game. So it's not often that I'll comment on UI sounds, because generally UI sounds just need to suit their purpose of providing some feedback, and other than that, just get out of the way. Whereas in Forza Horizon, they really seem to add a little bit to the overall energy. From the point of view of other sounds within your environment, There's the overall environmental sounds, which there's not much in the way of environmental sounds because you can't really hear much over the sounds of the engine. But you've got the crowd roaring as you're actually driving past them. Now, what's interesting about this is that in reality, you probably wouldn't hear this. You're in a car, you're driving fast, the engine's loud. Being able to hear somebody going, yay, as you drive past them at, 100 kilometers an hour is pretty unlikely. They've added this in because, again, like many computer games, this is not about simulating reality. This is about making an entertaining experience. And driving past a crowd on a corner, doing a burnout and having them all cheer at you just adds to the experience. Impact sounds, there's lots of them, from hitting rubber witches' hats to knocking over street signs to knocking over advertising things to full-on impacts at speed. The crashes have done a really, really good job because they all have a sense of the level of impact that's appropriate. When you hit just a normal everyday little street sign or a little wooden fence, it's just a very, very subtle little ping. It's out of the way, it's gone, because the event itself is out of the way and gone. It's not important. When you have a full-on collision, something that matters, then the audio is appropriately metal screeching, painful. You squirm as your car scrapes against something and you can feel the paint being torn off. Now, before I go on to the car sounds, I'm going to make a comment on another engine sound. And this is one that I think they just didn't quite capture that energy that I've been talking about. Forza has some really, really awesome feature races that exist for reasons other than just beating another car. And one of these was one of the first races I did, where I'm given an old Mustang and I'm told I have to race against a Mustang airplane. Now, this was really, really cool because the whole idea is that the plane's doing circuits and you're driving along the road and you're trying to beat it as you go along. Personally, though, it was a little bit disappointing for me because I've spent time recording old planes, and specifically I've recorded a Mustang fighter plane, and the sound of that plane is incredible. So as important as the engine sounds are to people who play racing car games, I was looking forward to the sound of this aircraft to really, really add to the excitement of this event. And yet when it flew over, well, look, let me just give you a perfect example of exactly the difference. My point here is that the sounds of the engines add so much to the experience of this game. The sounds of the cars are fantastic. But when they had the opportunity to really, really highlight the fact that you have got a super powerful World War II propeller-driven fighter plane flying just over your head, they lost a little bit of the impact that they could have had there. I'm being really, really picky here. I mean, generally the car engine sounds in this are great. And so let's get on to that. The cars themselves, there are so many of them. And in this demonstration, I'd only unlocked a couple. The Mustang was really, really good. And I also drive one of the Mitsubishi Evos, and that's fun. But it was later on when I got to unlock cars that were some of my favorite cars, like Aston Martins and convertible Audis and Porsches and Ferraris and all these really, really cool cars that, you know, I would love to drive myself. The satisfying thing for me was the sound of these engines, seeing what they sounded like while I was driving them. And they're really, really good. The difference of being able to sit either in the driver's seat or from behind, or my favorite basically was the camera perspective that looks like you're lying on the front of the bonnet. it feels so fast. You feel like you are lying on top of the engine on a lot of the cars. And the sound of these engines from this perspective makes you feel like you are going so fast. The cars have been tuned in such a way that you get really, really good road noise sound from either switching to gravel or the tarmac. The skids are really, really sharp. And this is the whole thing. All the engine sounds for this are really crisp, as well as having a really, really good sense of power behind them. And that's really what it's all about. I mean, the whole muscle car thing is all about having a set of exhaust pipes that are big enough to stick your arm down, and that when you start the car up, it feels like an earthquake. And in a lot of cases, whether these sounds are 100% accurate for the cars or not, I don't care about. What I care about is they sound like the car they should sound like. The Aston Martin certainly sounded like the Aston Martin should have sounded like. The VWs sounded like the VWs. The Fords sounded like the Fords. But they all sounded dynamic and exciting. And that's what it's about. It really, really doesn't matter if it's not 100% like what a real car sounds like. I'm not playing this to simulate driving to learn my license. I'm playing this for the excitement of doing crazy stunts in crazy cars at crazy speeds.
All right, so Forza Horizon, as I said, lots of fun. Sure, I was a little bit picky, but that was talking from a point of view of something that was very, very close to things I've worked on myself. So I felt I needed to point that out. But in general, I think there's a lot of things with racing games that you've got to get right technically. You might not have quite the same sort of ability to elaborate on narrative and put in unusual special effects and things like that, because pretty much your task is to get the cars sounding good. I enjoyed Forza Horizon and I thought it sounded pretty good. Thanks for watching.